This is the story of Mbuya VaRozvi, the matriarch whose authority came not from the standing army, but from the deep ancient whispers echoing from the stone foundations of the empire, and whose courage held the kingdom together when political tradition failed. The history of the Rozvi Empire, which dominated the Zimbabwean plateau from the mid-17th century until the 1300s, is often told as a saga of great male warriors, the Changamires, whose name became synonymous with power. The name Rozvi itself translates to destroyers or to plunder, a title earned through their fearsome military prowess that made them the most powerful fighting force in the whole of Zimbabwe. They were the kings who drove out the Portuguese and ruled from monumental cities built of stone, a legacy traced back through the Torwa and Great Zimbabwe states. Their capital, Danangombe, also known as Dlodlo, was an overwhelming visual statement of imperial might and cultural continuity. Danangombe was a deliberate replication of earlier Shona capitals, built to sustain the society and culture established at Khami. Its central area featured massive artificial platforms constructed atop a flat granite base, requiring the movement and placement of over 10,000 metric tons of stone rubble fill. These platforms were monumental. The western platform alone covered 900 square meters, its retaining walls rising in places over 6 meters high. These solid decorated walls, featuring intricate checker, cord and herringbone patterns, were constructed from undressed granite slabs, brightened by the striking chocolate brown color of bended ironstone imported from miles away. This capital symbolized permanence, unity, and absolute centralized power under the Changamire. Yet, this very centralization, while ensuring military dominance, created a critical point of failure in the political system. The kingship followed a strictly male line, making the death of a king a moment of extreme political volatility. Historical accounts confirm that the Changamire system was inherently fragile at the top, easily destabilized by internal dissent or external interference whenever the throne became vacant. When the mighty Changamire fell, the kingdom built on military force faced its most dangerous moment, a succession crisis. In this vacuum of male military authority, the fate of the destroyers did not rest on the battlefield, but within the walls of Danangombe, guarded by those traditionally excluded from kingship, the women and the spirit mediums. For the empire to survive, the physical power of the king had to be temporarily superseded by the spiritual foundation of the state, a power often wielded by women. This is where our story begins, the whisper of stone. On the high plateau of Zimbabwe, there was once a kingdom forged not just in fire, but in stone. This was the Rozvi Empire, rulers from the mid-17th century, a name that meant the destroyers. They were the fearsome masters of the plateau, the power that drove out the Portuguese, and the inheritors of the ancient legacy of Great Zimbabwe. Their capital was Danangombe. Look closely at these walls. They are not simple fortifications. These platforms, built on a granite base, required the builders to move over 10,000 metric tons of stone rubble fill. It was a visual statement, permanence, absolute power, and the centralized authority of the Changamire, the king. But for all its strength, the Rozvi system had one fatal flaw. Its succession was strictly patrilineal. When the Changamire fell, the massive kingdom of over 1 million people, military, judicial, religious, fractured instantly. In that dangerous vacuum, the empire relied on the strength of men and the wisdom of women. The official history tells us of the great warriors, the Changamires. But today we tell the story of the woman who held the kingdom together when the stone itself seemed ready to shatter. She was the ranking wife, the senior advisor, the heart of the royal house, Mbuya VaRozvi. Her challenge was immense. Could her kingship authority and deep institutional knowledge possibly defeat the Tumbare, the general who commanded the standing army of 3,000 men? Could a whisper from the sacred rocks overpower the roar of military ambition? The revolt began with the men's ambition for power, but the fate of the empire was tied to the beliefs and the spiritual reality.
Flashback to Chiroko meeting two shifty figures, Portuguese traders who carry muskets. He offers them trade access to the gold fields. Over the flashback, the Rozvi had a sacred anti-colonial mission established by Changamire Dombo. No Portuguese trader was allowed into the state. Chiroko, desperate for military backing, had broken the oldest law of the empire, promising the ancient enemy access to the gold fields in exchange for guns. A voice from Wari says, "The new king must be chosen by the spirit who remembers the promise of Dombo." Mbuya VaRozvi smiles, her resolve hardening. She carefully selects a group of inconspicuous travelers, the Vanyai, the sacred messengers of the Moari cult. Mbuya VaRozvi to the messengers. The message is this: Chiroko is a traitor. He has called the Portuguese back to Danangombe. Go to the regional chiefs. Tell them Moari commands them to rise and protect the sacred land. The messengers, disguised as common travelers, slip out of the city, bypassing the general's perimeter guards. Mbuya VaRozvi had activated the parallel power structure of the state. She had weaponized faith, but the Tumbare was a warrior, and his network of spies was vast. Dramatic moment. A messenger is intercepted by Chiroko's soldiers on a dusty road. He is forced to reveal the message. Chiroko stares at the sealed letter with fury. General Chiroko to his captain. "She moves against me with whispers. I will drown her whispers in blood. Bring the Portuguese musketeers and their auxiliaries. Today the walls of Danangombe will meet gunpowder. This ends now." The battle for the citadel, the matriarch's commander. Dawn breaks over Danangombe. Portuguese auxiliary forces and Chiroko's loyalists surround the massive stone walls. The general is directing the placement of a small cannon. The Tumbale was ruthless. The Portuguese forces, backed by European firepower, were a terrible threat. Chiroko wanted Mbuya VaRozvi and the heir dead before the loyalist chiefs could arrive. The fight was now a siege against the very heart of Shona heritage. Inside the citadel, Mbuya VaRozvi is not hiding. She is moving between the huts built atop the daka-covered rubble. She might have been a woman, barred from kingship, but Mbuya VaRozvi was the commander of logistics and morale. Women traditionally manage cultivation, grain stores, and the care of the population. In the siege, these were critical military functions. She transformed her domestic knowledge into strategic command. Mbuya VaRozvi, giving orders calmly. The western storehouse holds the water. Distribute the rations. only enough for 4 days. Young ones, you will fill the gaps in the wall with loose stone. The sounds of the siege begin. The crack of muskets against the stone walls. Then the terrifying sound of a small cannon. The Rozvi had built these walls, featuring the intricate checker and herringbone patterns to last 1,000 years. But the world was changing. Traditional strength was now vulnerable to foreign technology. Dramatic moment. A cannonball strikes the high retaining wall of the western platform. Stone and imported bended ironstone erupt into dust. A sacred section of the wall is breached. Mbuya VaRozvi looking at the breach with a flicker of pain. They are assaulting the memory of Dombo. Sound the drums. Light the sacred fire. Let the Tumbare's men know they fight against the ancestors themselves. The rhythmic, deep booming of ancestral war drums starts up from the heart of the citadel. General Chiroko receives a report, irritated. Chief Captain, your own men are hesitating. They fear the drums. They say the matriarch has invoked Dombo's wrath. General Chiroko, furious. Fear is weakness. He points to the breach. Send the final ultimatum across the rubble. Tell the matriarch she has until midnight to surrender the boy, or we will take the wall at dawn and she will be the first to fall. Mbuya VaRozvi reads the note, standing amongst the rubble. She holds the young heir close. Mbuya VaRozvi, to the heir, her voice quiet but strong. They think force is everything, my son. They forget the power of Divanyai is the speed of thought and the strength of the spirit. We hold. We wait for the dawn. Close up on Mbuya VaRozvi's eyes watching the darkness. The fires of the besiegers burn outside the broken walls. Will the regional armies arrive in time to save them? Fade to black. The divine judgment, the unmasking. Pre-dawn, silence descends over Danangombe. Mbuya VaRozvi, dressed in ceremonial robes, stands atop the highest remaining section of the 6-meter wall, exposed to the besiegers. This was the final gamble. Mbuya VaRozvi had to break the general's will, not his defenses. She used her ceremonial position, the structural power women held in the spiritual realm, to deliver a devastating public indictment. Mbuya VaRozvi, General Chiroko, look at these walls. Look at the ancestors you betray. You have sold the Rozvi heritage for the guns of the Portuguese. You have violated the oath of Dombo. Chiroko is exposed, looking up at her from below the wall. His face is a mask of rage, but his loyal soldiers look nervous. Mbuya VaRozvi says, you seek kingship through murder. The high god Mwari has judged you. Your path brings not strength, but drought. It brings famine and the curse of the ancestors upon this land. Lay down your arms, soldiers, or Mwari will condemn you all. Dramatic moment. The loyalist soldiers begin to matter. They are torn between their commander's military strength and the matriarch's sacred, unchallengeable authority. Suddenly, a roar and the sound of battle erupt from behind the Portuguese lines. The Vanyai had done their work. The regional chiefs, loyal to the divine mandate delivered by the matriarch, had arrived. They struck the Portuguese auxiliaries in a coordinated, devastating surprise attack. Chaos. The regional Rozvi forces armed with traditional weapons, crash into the flanks of the Portuguese and Chiroko's men. General Chiroko, losing control, rushes to the fight. General Chiroko shouts, "Hold the line, traitors!" The battle is swift and decisive. The Tumbare's authority collapses, defeated by the combined weight of faith and the fury of the loyalist chiefs. Chiroko is isolated, surrounded, and captured. The spiritual counter-coup had succeeded where military strength failed. Mbuya VaRozvi, without ever lifting a spear, had proven that the structural, spiritual authority held by women was the ultimate check on the male military state. Mbuya VaRozvi descends the walls, walking past the broken stones. She formally places the royal regalia upon the young heir. Mr. Rozvi, strong, clear voice. The treason is purged. The emperor is crowned. The remaining council members bow. The crisis is over, but a new one looms. The empire was saved, but the signs of Mwari's displeasure over the bloodshed remained. The land was scorched. The threat of prolonged drought, the ultimate sign of religious disobedience, loomed over the kingdom. In the years that followed, Mbuya VaRozvi became the true power behind the throne. Her first act was not vengeance, but restoration, rebuilding the physical walls to symbolize the spiritual integrity of the state. She reinforced Dombo's anti-colonial policy, ensuring trade passed only through Vashadi, the middleman.
The enduring legacy. In the years that followed, Mbuya VaRozvi became the true power behind the throne. Her first act was not vengeance, but restoration, rebuilding the physical walls to symbolize the spiritual integrity of the state. She reinforced Dombo's anti-colonial policy, ensuring trade passed only through Vashadi, the middleman, to guarantee Rozvi independence. She understood the political flaws that had nearly killed the empire. She strengthened the religious council's power, decentralizing some control away from the military elite to prevent another Tumbare from rising. Mbuya VaRozvi, now older, looking out over the restored stone city, looking forward, reflective, she says, "The power of the spear is temporary. The power of the spirit is written in the stones." The legacy of Mbuya VaRozvi echoes through Shona history, manifesting centuries later in figures like the powerful spirit medium Mbuya Nehanda, who also rose to wield unifying authority against colonial pressure. The Rozvi state, saved by the matriarch's courage, flourished for another century. This history reveals a profound paradox. While the kingdom was overtly ruled by men, the mechanism that ensured its long-term survival was matriarchal. The king sat on the throne, but the woman held the spiritual foundation, the kingmaker's authority. The walls of Danangombe stand today, a testament to the mighty Changamire. But listen closely. In the wind whispering through the chevron-patterned stones, you can still hear the wisdom of the matriarch, the woman whose courage and strategy prove that the heart of an empire is not in the power it destroys, but in the spirit it preserves. The story of Mbuya VaRozvi confirms that courage in leadership is not always measured by the sword, but often by political wisdom, spiritual leverage, and the strategic deployment of institutional authority. The vast walls of Danangombe, built of over 10,000 metric tons of stone, stand today as a silent monument to the ambition of the Changamire. Yet, they are also an enduring hidden memorial to the powerful women, the Mbuyas, whose wisdom and unwavering political courage, etched into the spiritual foundations of the state, ensured the survival of the empire when all else crumbled.